This is Reimagining Higher Education, your go-to podcast with remarkable education leaders sharing personal stories from their experience in and around the sector, including reflection and hope for progress in the sector. With your host, Professor Judyth Sachs, former PVC Learning and Teaching at the University of Sydney, Deputy Vice-Chancellor and Provost at Macquarie University, and Special Advisor in Higher Education at KPMG, and now Chief Academic Officer at Studiosity. Welcome.
It gives me great pleasure to be talking to the President of University of Wollongong in Dubai, and it's Professor Mohamed Salem Zein. So, Professor Zein, thank you for giving me time this afternoon. You've been at Wollongong Dubai for quite a while, and 2015 as President, and before that 2004. But I don't want to introduce you. I would like you to tell us your career and how you've got to be where you are now.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and it's really a pleasure to be with you this morning. I'm not sure if my career with Wollongong was planned. I was, if I can say, minding my own business, working for IBM in Toronto, northern Toronto, and I got this call from a headhunter that Wollongong is building. They already had the operation for 10 years then in Dubai, and they're building more STEM-related computing and engineering programs and attracting faculty members. And my wife liked the idea of moving to Dubai as a middle ground between East and West and the world. And since then, I've never looked back. So this year was 20 years with Wollongong in Dubai. Well, I don't know how much. I'm not very good at telling a story about myself, but I sometimes reflect on a bit the journey. My journey is a very bit complicated because it's cross countries, cross culture. I was born and raised in a place that very few people would intuitively put on the map. A place called Mauritania. It's northwest Africa.
Yes.
It's a country with very interesting population structure. It has Arabic component, has a very good also West African dimension, where the native really people, Arabs, has pushed in that part of the world over the years, but or over centuries. But you grow up in that environment, in a very multicultural environment. And ended up going to a much more multicultural country for education, Canada, between the French side of Canada and the English side of Canada. And so I think that's very, very enriching, and ended up in Dubai. They say Dubai has more than 200 nationalities. So it's a kind of that sort of work. So I've studied originally, from early age, I was more into STEM and ended up studying computing at all the way, and then did a PhD between the University of Montreal and the University of Waterloo, and jointly funded by IBM Canada. And that's how really. So my PhD also is more of in an industrial environment than a very traditional PhD. And that has impacted a lot my career as an academic. I've always been more leaning toward applied side of teaching, and practical things. And because of that, yes, that's who I am. And happy to add any further clarification or questions you would like.
So that very cosmopolitan sort of educational experience, and in particular in Montreal, where French and English are
That's right.
The lingua franca. Did you have to write your PhD dissertation in French?
Well, because I studied officially at the University of Montreal, and I'm fluent speaker of French. My master thesis was written in French, but because I was doing my PhD jointly with the University of Waterloo and IBM, I needed the School of Graduate Studies to give me permission to write it in English. So it's a very interesting, but in Montreal, everyone is kind of bilingual, but also part of that experience there, I also developed that. You see a very, despite what could be seen from outside as English versus French, but Canada has very good respect of languages in general, has very good respect of part of the countries and what everyone is adding to enriching the culture of the country. So the fact that I spoke both English and French made me really comfortable around Canada. Yeah.
And so the other element that makes you unique in the academy is that you've crossed over between the commercial business world and the academy. So talk to me a little bit about how that makes you different and how you navigate the academic world from a business, pluralistic, multicultural perspective.
Well, it's sometimes when you speak to academics, you have to be extremely careful not to look too commercial or too business. They might exclude you from the, if we can call it the club or the academic side. I think it's, and this is important for running branch campuses where you're not funded by the Commonwealth. So you need to be constantly mindful of, we are here on the big mission of education, the big mission of really bringing education and bringing the Australian really best practices in education to a part of what basically what we do, I think, is getting education closer to students. But at the same time, we have to be mindful that to make it sustainable, we need to look at the other side of the story, which is the business. If we want to get the best labs for engineering, well, we have to be able to afford them, and we have to be able to afford actually academics. The most expensive part in running quality branch campuses is to attract quality academics. And when you want to attract quality academics, you have to look after, can they live here? Can they get the right compensation so they can send their children to good private schools? Can they get better health insurances? So it is really that side, in my view, that allow us to continue this mission. It's not like when you were funded directly by the government. So it's a stressful thing. It is something you have to constantly remind colleagues of. But I really feel the mission of education worth everything. That's my view. I'm really, if you ask me what's kept me going on and what's kept my colleagues here going on, is really this feeling that eventually we're able to impact some people's life, that we are really getting a best practice or an experience a lot of people would have not had the chance to get. We're getting close, and we are offering it here. And I think the University of Wollongong, in my view, looking at 17,000 alumni in this country coming from more than 120 nationalities, I think that's a great legacy for Wollongong, and great legacy actually for Australia. Many of the Australian officials who come through the Middle East will tell me that this is playing a big part in the soft diplomacy in what Australia is able to help the rest of the world with. So it's you need that kind of dimension into this.
So 30 years for Wollongong, that's some achievement for an international campus, transnational campus, to be continuing and thriving. In the years that you've been there, how have you seen higher education develop, change, and be modified during your tenure, both as an academic, but also your tenure as the president?
I think particularly if I look at the region here, higher education has changed from an initial need for just probably undergraduate education, for training people to get a first degree, to gradually really and particularly the UAE, there is really a big focus here on building a knowledge economy. So the dimension of postgraduate education, the dimension of research, the dimension of converting that research in entrepreneurial activities to a wealth of the country. I see that as a big change. If I compare the first year where I joined Wollongong in 2004, and had a chance to speak to colleagues who've been with Wollongong before that. It was at the beginning just a teaching time and a need for teaching. Things have shifted completely, and the strategy of the various level of government, either Dubai or the federal government in the UAE or the state government in Abu Dhabi, for example, is heavily focused now on knowledge, heavily focused on research. And so it's a maturity. I think the country is maturing. And the neighboring countries also, where it's a kind of a catchment for our students. Wollongong, Dubai get about 30% of their students from outside, and about 70% what we call the international domestic and domestic here. There is that new really interest in the UAE and Dubai as modern education that is not only teaching, but rather engagement with industry, that is research, and that is more having an impact on the community rather than just the initial mission of teaching.
Now, I've asked previous people that I've spoken to, had conversations with, to bring an object that represents their journey to being a learner and a leader. Did you find something that represented your journey as a learner and a leader?
Traditionally, people think of gowns and things of university of this. I like books, and to the point that I'm still a bit traditional when reading papers rather than electronics books. But I still have my PhD on my desk, thesis, with all of the traditional old, framing and the way it was binded together. And it's getting a bit yellowish color in some pages. But that's constantly reminds me of that great times and difficulties. I feel the journey of the PhD for me is quite unique and different. I didn't feel challenged too much by my undergrad. I felt I was on top of whatever I'm going through, and but I felt really the journey in the PhD is the first time where I felt I would do 6 months of experiment, I would do 6 months of research, and come back with zero result. And I have to come back again and change my strategy, change my focus, and I still feel it gave me skills that I didn't have really, more than my undergrad education. So I have my PhD thesis constantly on my desk. I have every now and then showed it to students, but not too much.
So that being challenged, what did you learn from that, and what did you take away from that experience that when you're supervising students you reflect on?
Yeah. Well, that's an important point, because when we supervise students here, particularly in this part of the world, we often think of that student here doing HDR or student doing master's degree where they need to do a capstone or undergrad. There is a slight lack of understanding of so it's not a matter of just few months or few years and you get your PhD or you get your capstone. There is need for reinforcing that you reach a point in your education where we can supervise you, we can help you, we can try to coach you, but you have to start doing things by yourself. You have to do things by yourself. And I think that is an important part, in my view, in the maturity of the region here and the maturity of the part of the world we are operating in, and bringing that strict standard of quality from Wollongong and from the Australian education system is very important. So you're doing a PhD, you have to assume it may not happen if you don't put the necessary effort. If you don't go by the right book, it's not a matter of time and you will get it. And I think I constantly remind students of that. My actually supervisor a long time ago, he grew up in a German culture, and he would say to me from day one, "It's your PhD, not mine. I've done mine." So, that's a very important, I think, and good contribution that our standards here, Wollongong standard in this part of the world, and I've heard it from students over and over, is we're bringing that strict understanding of academic integrity and quality. So students understand that it's about me learning how to learn, it's about me contributing, and yeah. So I guess that's an area where I feel we contribute quite well in the maturity of students. And by the way, there is a lot of challenges in my view in maturity of students. We think we've seen it now in undergrad. We don't know if it is the COVID generation who didn't go enough to school and do the face-to-face in high school and came to university. But we've been the other day in the education committee discussing that there is definitely a couple of generations joined the university that I'm not yet sure why they're here, or they're investing time, they're investing money in their tuition fees, but they don't seem yet understanding that it's a very serious business, that the university is a very big component. And I think that's in my view one of the challenges currently with all universities are facing is why are you coming to university? What do you want from university? Do you understand how far can university help, and what's the part you need to contribute? Yeah.
So given this sort of students being betwixt and between, not knowing what they want, but wanting something that they don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
How is the university responding? How is your university responding to that too? Because the student experience is fundamental to students feeling successful.
Yeah. I think we feel the burden of and the responsibility. I feel it myself, I think, constantly. The percentage of people who end up doing a first degree, and then very few would do a second degree, a master degree, and very, very few will end up in a HDR program. So the burden of that and the burden of doing something about it is really part of what keeps me awake, literally. What we're doing about it is we are not giving chance for anything to miss out. So we're looking really at the teaching and learning, at the delivery of teaching and learning. What do we do with attendance? Is attendance really, is it reasonable to expect a student to attend and take note the same old way? Or we have to offer the face-to-face and then offer also supplemented with pre-recorded lectures, supplemented with what we call summary of lectures. It's a burden on academics, but I think we're at a stage where I think we need to provide all sorts of opportunities for students. Mm-hmm. We, for example, at the university have created what we call a student success center. It's a kind of a one-stop shop helping the different schools. Mm-hmm. And the idea is to get colleagues who will speak to students who have any sort of stress, any sort of panic, progress, or sort of to try to get them and book for them a time with an academic advisor, book for them a time with a head of school or a senior academic. And that's part of that. And also we are rethinking constantly this issue of assessment, this issue of assessment versus delivery. Are we assessing too much? Are we not paying attention to the final objective, which is the outcome? Ultimately, it's that outcome. We get very pleasing information towards the end of the journey of the student in the university. The Ministry of Education in the UAE currently has a survey for graduates similar to what happened in Australia. Now our students are almost 90% employed within 6 to 7 months. Mm-hmm. And out of the remaining 10%, there is a small portion which is not looking for a job, they're working for family businesses. So that's definitely something on the road, on the way, leading to that, something good happen. But to answer your question, we're really exploring all possibilities. So we have what we call the first year experience. Mm-hmm. We have what we call the last year experience. In the last year experience, we're trying to focus on what sort of work integrated learning we can embed in class and getting industry, particularly our rich alumni network, to come and speak to students. We're looking really at the capstone itself as key component for maturity of student. That's component is what we do in the last year or year and a half. But the first year experience, we ended up sometimes offering traditional contact hours, but we offer additional contact hours, but we don't make them compulsory. We allow students who have any sort of difficulty to come to additional hours with top student, honor student, and the office hours. So I think, would this be sustainable for a long time? For if the number of students grow up bigger, I'm not sure, but I think we're in a situation where trying to say, let's get the first year transition from high school solid. Let's get them more independent in the other years and really focus on readiness for employability, focus on those internships, focus on capstones also, to combining that. But I feel there is really a different change, and I'm sometimes a bit frank with academics, saying we're a bit in denial as academics. We're still, or some of us, or a good part of us, still wanting to deliver the same old way we used to deliver. And the audience has just moved on. The audience is really learning in a different way.
So when you think back to your experience as a student and being a successful student, who, as an undergraduate who wasn't challenged, how would you describe the experience of students now? You sort of alluded to it with the post-COVID stuff, but how do you create an environment for students on campus where they feel engaged, not only with the content of the curriculum, but also with growing up? You know, going to university is actually about identity formation and about you as an adult. So what sort of observations can you make about what's happening in your university?
I think those two elements, if you ask me, between challenges with curriculum and challenges with growing up, I would think more effort has to be done in the growing up part. I think high school still provides students who are comfortable in quantitative skills and math and statistics, and English, and really probably for business, and quite creative, by the way. We have a degree in media and communication, very popular. Students are really creative, in those. But I think that's growing up, in my view, is something as a university we have to put more effort in it. We're fortunate here that we operate, the way Wollongong operates in Dubai is we run exactly the same program as we run it in Wollongong. But on top of it, the Commission of Academic Accreditation will ask us to add general education component. So, and that's an area they're asking for history and culture of the region. They're asking for UAE studies to be covered somehow in the curriculum, and innovation and entrepreneurship. So, and that's probably because the legacy of the system used in the UAE is more influenced by liberal arts in the US type of education. So we have seen when we run, for example, subjects that have a dimension of philosophy and critical thinking, and when we teach the Islamic, for example, history, we don't teach Islam. We teach more of a comparative study between the different culture and how in different culture science has evolved. Those subjects, for example, we've seen amazing outcome coming from them. So that idea of having really those, and this subject I just mentioned, we teach it at 300 level. We don't teach it first year or second year. We really want students to have completed 2 full years of university, and they'll be in a class where some of them coming from engineering, some from business, some from media, from different measures. Same thing happened with the innovation and entrepreneurship. We're not targeting to make people innovative or more innovative than they are, but we're trying for them to think of, we can create, we can be entrepreneurial. You don't have to wait. I wish in my generation that was enforced more. We were more directed towards tough exams in math and physics, and you have to pass this and pass that. And I think the opportunity is now for people to be more creative, to be more creating their own opportunities to create work themselves. So these are areas that I've seen really helping in maturity of students. But I think we do a lot of other campaigning side on academic integrity, and listen, you have to think of the academic integrity constantly. There is no reason. If you can't prepare for an exam or an assignment, or write to the lecturer and say, I'm not ready, whatever it takes, but I'm not ready. Let me buy me some time, though. I don't know, lose some marks, but you still get the value of doing your own work. I think that's also another very important area that you're investing in your future. Don't let the pressure of assignment, don't let the pressure of exams and the ease of having content online get you into that route of academic integrity. You should. I don't think there is enough yet that we do. I think we need to do more, and we're revising currently our pathway freshman. So most of the students in this part of the world will have to do a 1-year freshman before doing a typical Australian 3 years degree. And within that program, we can do more, in my view, from of study skill in university life, and also why university. Yeah, so there is a lot of things I think we can do there, but equally, I think from the academic side, our colleagues on the other side, I think the challenge is to understand that the delivery of teaching must be different now. I think the heavy assessment is not anymore. Actually, it's not adding great value in achieving the learning outcome, and students are exposed to a lot of content. So if they want to come to class, they probably want you to be able to give them something very different than what's available, and to be more engaging and more interactive. Our computer science has tried in their first year experience a very interesting model of saying, not doing lecture and tutorial. We do lab separate, but lecture and tutorial, they've experimented for the last 2 years of mixing this and doing some lecturing and some engagement on workshop. Their pass rate in introductory subject in programming went very high compared to the past. So that's, and I think that's a way of capturing the lack of focus in some students, the lack of interest in attending and taking notes, and so keeping them busy. Once they pass that first year, they usually get on well with the traditional university independent learning. Yeah.
So if you could change one thing to enhance the student experience, so I'm going to give you a one, and I'm going to give
Just
you unlimited
one.
resources.
Yes.
What would you do to enhance the student experience?
I would definitely work harder in terms of professional development and in terms of engagement with the academics to understand that the world around us has changed. I think to some extent the academic community, it's not only Wollongong or Dubai. I think I've seen across many other universities that I feel a bit of denial of the need to shift to a modern approach. And I'm not saying just using technology on the course, but I think it's more of a addressing the curiosity of a student in a way that gets them believe this is a very interesting experience. This is not just a journey to get a piece of paper and then trying to find some professional training later to get a better job. But it's really, I feel that hasn't been addressed more. I think we're doing a lot of work to help students with capturing lectures and other supporting things. And pretty much now, for example, the Wollongong library provide our students in Dubai with the same rich amount of online content they would find in Australia, so they can access it anywhere. But I feel we need, as an academic, probably as a whole academic society, we need to start thinking really of the subject we're teaching. Do we need all of that content? Do we need all of these contact hours? Do we need to still push a lot, or what can we do really as the essential and coach student and help them really learn it by themselves? I just feel we might be in some sort of denial, academic in general, insisting on our same old way of doing things, and the world around us is just changing so fast. I come from a computing background, and there was days where you have to write every single line of code. Now you drag and drop models and the computer generate your code. So it's shifting towards more analyzing the big picture, spending time on the most important things other than the small things. There is a bit of similarity between that and academia. Probably my colleagues, academics, would have all sorts of different opinion, but I think we should not become obsolete. We should not allow, I've heard that there is a very interesting summit happening annually here called the Dubai Government Summit. And this year they brought a senior AI expert. And he said the IQ of the future AI software is going to be multiplied by 10. And that could lead to basically getting your own tutor that adapt to what your way of learning and your difficulties. So we need to be augmenting that, not fighting it, probably.
So then what that also requires is for students to be curious.
That's right.
And how do we engender a sort of a curiosity to what's happening around them, but also what's happening globally?
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. I get, I've, for example, been regularly participating in open days when we speak to potential students and their parents. And you get this question, say, so my son will do mechatronic engineering, so why would he do it? Why can't he do 4-month online training on robots? And so what's the value? And I think that issue is probably student and their parent not understanding necessarily the key values that the university add to you on top of it, but you get exposed in 3 years or 4 years honors degree to colleagues with various experiences, with various research interests, with their own network and industry, and they could bring to the table really how what is learned at the university allow you to be flexible and to work in different places. A bit to look at that curiosity of the student. I think some of the students are more curious now coming from high school than before, than other probably previous generation, but they're curious in different areas. So for example, you find that they sometimes, the question they ask looks like they want a generic degree, not really a specialized degree. They want a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And university is still a bit rigid. You can do a double degree, you can do a minor, but that's the extent of what you can do. But I think the university has to entertain that curiosity and has to help with it rather than, so if you see the programs, sometimes some of these programs have room for very few number of electives, which means we're kind of forcing you to go in one way, on one path. Is that why can't we start looking at reducing that core as much as possible in the degrees to the key essential things, but allowing a more reshaping your degree further? I know there have been few experiences, different parts of the world actually around it. But in my view, this all comes to this change that's happening around us in terms of student, the way they learn, their interest, the way we're still teaching and the way industry is expecting people to come ready. And we haven't reconciled all of that yet. I think we do end up, obviously we have our students are having very good placement rate, and actually Wollongong in Australia has a very good reputation in terms of getting students ready for employment. But I think we're at a time, if you ask me what's the challenges for the sector, it's, are we going to be here 10 years if we don't look at these things? Are we going to be attracting the same number of people, or people are just going to bypass universities to some other alternative?
And how do you answer your question?
Personally, I think we need to do something about it. I really think we need to do something. And interestingly, even though I'm worried about the maturity of students coming from high school and how they see university and how the, by the way, Probably in a context which is very different. For example, if you're in Australian university and you get the bulk of your student coming from the same system, we get on average students from 25 different academic curricula. Some of them coming from, for example, the IB, where they have been pushed to a lot of out of the box thinking. Some of them come from British curriculum, where it is very much specialized since year 10 or something like that. Some of them from the Arabic curriculum, the Indian, Russian, the Pakistani, the African. So get these people into year one and try to think they will all respond in the same way is a challenge for branch campuses, I think. So we do a lot of work there to make sure that what we're trying to say is, well, here's the Australian typical model where we empower you. We want you to take responsibility for your learning. We don't do too much lecturing, but we do also tutoring. We do labs component. That get the student into that culture of kind of the Aussie type of learning. I've been asked in the past, is there actually an Australian way of learning different? I think there is. I think there is a bit of trust in student, dealing with student as really partner, as colleagues, and empowering them, which is very pronounced in the Australian, I think, system. But it's really, I feel that is a big challenge, but equally, and I'm pretty sure our curriculums and the way we teach, I think it is time to have a bit of a debate around it.
I agree. Yeah. I agree.
I think so.
I've got two questions to go. What advice would you give? You're giving a graduation address. What advice would you give to the students who are graduating at the end of their degrees?
Well, it's I like every now and then when I do that and speak to our students. I would like them to add a value to society. I'd like them to think of it as, I'm not just going to be rich myself, or I'm going to be very famous and publishing in high journals or the outstanding academics. I would like our graduate to be going out and saying, I'm going to make a difference. And if you look at these graduates, for example, come from so many nationalities. A lot of these expats came to this part of the world, worked extremely hard in basic jobs to get those children to go to a modern, well-established university. And you would like to see them giving back to that. I myself keep in mind the country I grew up, quite underdeveloped, and the opportunity I got there. And I'm constantly saying at some point in time, I have to go back. I have to be able to help others to get to a similar journey or something. So I would like really our graduates to be able to give to society in any way they want, but not to be only about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's a quite often spoke, because if you do that, you end up, if you're only, there is an Arabic saying that says, if you only focus on yourself, you will find it hard to deal with it. If you have a bigger ambition, you'll be able to handle that.
And then the final question is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh, I had a career in industry and a career in, actually spent a couple of years with the government. I think the career in education is rewarding, but in a different way. I think if you want to choose an academic career, it's probably not going to be the source of wealth. You probably have a decent life, but I think you have to be at peace with the idea that you're going to be patient, you're going to be looking after students. When you deal with students, different cases, simple cases, students with talent, you have to constantly keep in mind that you're not here as a to judge them. You're here to empower, you're here to help. You have to listen sometimes to, excuse me if I say, to nonsense, but you have to. So I think there is that kind of preparation for this career. It's a very rewarding career, but you have to choose it in the right way. It may not be the career for everyone.
So would you do it again?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. Even though coming from a practical engineering background, yes, I would do it. Actually, in my current position, the last 3-4 years, I have been able to teach because of the work, but I'm talking to one of the schools to teach a postgrad. So I just feel going back, it relieves me from stress. I feel that's a very important part of our career, to be close with students. Yes, I would do it. I'll do it definitely.
Thank you for a most entertaining, enjoyable, and enlightening conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
Yes, I did. And thank you very much. And I think this is really, would love to have time to listen to more of these podcasts you do, because I think it kind of bring a very interesting breadth of our experiences as academic, and allow us to think also and know that all of us are on the same boat eventually and with the same mission. Thank you very much.
You have been listening to Studiosity's podcast, Reimagining Higher Education, candid conversations within higher education, sharing stories of leadership, change, and best practice in teaching and learning. Visit studiosity.com.